record this part, so I'm going to record it here. Oops, I guess I got to share my screen. I just can't pull it up. Okay, so this is the triggers we went over last week. And then I always say, when you start to look at your past, does your past make you a victim, or is it to make you a warrior? So like Sarah, you talked, like you went through something pretty major as a kid, not pretty major, major as a kid. But a lot of people, and I know people in the past that made them a victim their entire life. So it can make you a victim or it can make you a warrior. Because I love this statement: you were given a mountain to teach others how to move over it, go around it, or go through it, get past it. I mean, maybe things happen in people's lives. They happen for them, not always to them. Like maybe something happened, there's a lesson in there that you may not realize yet that you can teach other people. It doesn't have to be in the form of, how to get past molestation or whatever, but it could be a different route of something that you learned from going through that. So with your triggers, when the triggers come up for you, there's 3 ways to diffuse them, or 3 steps in order to diffuse them. That's put my glasses on. See, I'm getting old. It always gives, so I have a big ring light up here, but it always gives like the reflection of the light in my glasses. The awareness. So it's a knowledge of identifying the story and staying true to the present moment. So I kind of talk about that when I always share the story of like when my husband and I get in an argument and I go to that insecure place, and it literally happened last night again. It doesn't mean I get over it. Like we were just easy to identify, both of us, last night when it happened. And it's an acknowledging and identifying the story and separating yourself from that moment. So you aware, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. The mental action of choosing to speak from the present and not your story. Last night I was in a space where I spoke from my story, and he called me on it right away. And I was like, you're totally right. Even though I hate admitting that, because I want to fight that I'm not doing it right. But he now can notice when I'm doing it and I'm in that different space. But then it's the response and how you choose your words and actions. So the difference is now, even when I go to that space, I'm much quicker to apologize and recognize it. And when he called me on it, and I'm like, you're totally right. I'm sorry. I was in the wrong space. So it's the awareness, the separation, and then your response. So there's a statement that I'm going to show you next. So there's this book called, A Man's Search for Meaning. And it's written by Viktor Frankl. So Viktor Frankl was in the Holocaust, and he lost his mother, father, wife, children, like everybody in his family. And he went on to become a famous psychologist and write all of this stuff. And he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, sorry. Are you send this to us or no?
What's that?
What you're showing us right now, will you send that to us or no? I'm wondering how much.
Yeah, so you don't have to take notes on it if you don't want to. I could send it to you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's easier that way. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is your power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. I think that is so freaking powerful, because it's just that when that trigger will set you off and you have that moment that you can respond as how you like the old version of yourself, or you can respond from the new version of yourself. And that's where your growth and your freedom lies. Like that is so dang powerful to me. And it says everything. So it goes back to here. You have your awareness, your separation, and your response. And that's where your growth comes from. So the next part of it is there's 4 stages of after you can figure out what triggers you. There's 4 stages that you start to go through when you're growing in this path. So the first one is the acknowledgement. It's just beginning to recognize when it happens. Like, oh, okay, I'm speaking from my old self, not from my current present woman that I am. But then what happens is you start to have resistance against it because you notice how often it's happening. And mental work to keep yourself in the present moment, because our comfort zone is to go back to that old version of us. Mm-hmm. And then we start to resist it because you're like, this is the 5th time in the last hour that this has happened to me. Like, you start to push it back, right? because now you're acknowledging it. Now you're aware of it. Now you're seeing it. So the third part is the discovery, and it's noticing how it makes you feel and how long it knocks you off your game. Because sometimes you can think about this when you look back and you're like, wow, that whatever situation, maybe it was with your family, that has bothered me for 4 days. That's been in the back of my head, and I haven't been present at work. I haven't been present with my family because I'm still worrying about the competition that my sister-in-law did with me, whatever. You know what I mean? So what you start to learn is to condense that recovery time, your bounce back rate, which we'll talk about next, of how quickly it throws you off your game. So before, like last night when I had that little argument with my husband, it was instant. I was able to bounce back instantly, when before I would have left the room, we wouldn't have talked, it would have gone into the morning, you know what I mean? Like it would have drug on a lot longer. Now we can bounce back a lot quicker from it, so it's not taking up too much of the time. And then you get to a point which I named prowess, because you no longer need to think about it. When your inner child presents itself, you acknowledge it, no thanks, I got this, and realize why she's presenting herself, which we'll get into a little bit later, which is funny because once your spouse understands it, that was the first time he called me out on it last night before I realized I was doing it. He's like, yo, that's your past talking right there. And I'm like, God, I've told you too much. But
yeah.
So talking about the bounce back rate. So it's how quickly you can get yourself back to the present moment after a trigger has set you off. So these are my levels that I've created. All this is my own stuff. So this is what I always say. And I love little pictures because to me it's easier. And when you have kids, this just makes sense. So you can go on sloth speed that you didn't realize you were even out of whack until you look backwards. Oh, does that make sense? That you're like, because you're like, man, I've been off for a week. And that's what I feel like with this lethargic thing. I feel like there's something that I don't recognize right now that's thrown me off and I can't figure out what the heck it is. But I feel like when I look backwards, I'll be like, oh, it was that. Unless it's something like medical that I can't understand. So the next one I call turtle speed, where it's like 3 days where it threw you off. Something happened on the weekend. It's not about till Wednesday that you're like, screw them, forget it, I'm back in my place. It takes you a little bit shorter of a time, but still not quick. Then you have cute little rabbit speed where you sleep it off in one night, you wake up the next morning and you're back on your game. Then I call it German Shepherd speed, which the same day, just within a few hours. So it happened in the morning, and by the evening, you've let it go. And then this is what happened with me last night. It was within a couple of seconds, not more than an hour, that I was able to flip myself and get it back, which is really cool because I used to operate more in like the sloth world because I have a hard time apologizing or saying I was wrong. I live in that space sometimes. Anybody can relate.
Yeah.
So
I can recognize it now. I feel like I can recognize myself doing it, but I'm so stubborn in the moment that I don't allow myself to stop doing it. That I take control of when I shouldn't.
Yeah. That is, I don't know if it's like a type A person. I don't know what that is, but that was, for a long time, that was me too. Because I would be saying things and knowing that I was saying them and I shouldn't be saying them, but I keep saying them and I can't stop. And I'm trying to prove my point, which I know is probably wrong, but I can't stop.
But it's not going to make me feel any better when I prove it. But I have to get it out because this makes it normal, though. I know, appreciate this because, and then I can get past it. This is good.
Well, it is, because, and this also isn't conversations that you normally have. Like, you don't share these things because for the most part, like, it's an ugliness about ourselves. Like, it's not a great quality, but it's saying it like, it's a normal thing. Like, this is how we react to things and it's okay. But for us to better ourselves, it's knowing, I don't want to be in sloth speed going through this. I don't want to realize I was out of whack for an entire week. I want to know that something, because here's the reality, the triggers aren't going to go away. Doesn't matter how much you work on yourself, whatever. Something can always set you off because depending on the mood, the moment, PMSing, whatever, something can set you off. And you got to be able to bounce back. You got to be able, awareness, bounce back and get yourself back on the right track, because you don't want to give too much time to something. And that's what it is too. Like when you think about your family, Tanya, and you're like, I just gave how many hours of my day thinking about my sister-in-law who is competitive, and I wasn't present for my kids. I didn't get things done at my job because I was thinking about her. That's like handing your power over on a silver platter. Like, here, take my power.
Right.
And when you think about it that way, you're like, I don't want to give you my power, sister. No. Wait. When you start thinking about, like, I am not giving, because I'm in my late teens, early 20s, I went through an abusive relationship. And for many years that bothered me, and probably why I didn't get married until I was 29 or even enter like another serious relationship. And when I started to do this work and look back, I was like, I gave that MFer how many years of power when we weren't even together. And even when I entered into marriage with Nick, I was very jealous at first because I had fear that he was going to cheat on me and he was going to do this and he was going to do that. And it was all because that other person still had power over me. That many years later. And then once I realized that, I was like, I hate that dude. Like, I don't have any power over me anymore. Okay, so how do you bounce back? Once you're in that space, how do you even bounce back? So one, remove yourself from the situation that triggered you. So even if you're with your family, Tanya, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to walk down the street back to my house because I just don't want to be around this anymore. You don't have to be mean. You do it with class, you do it with grace, and you just say, this isn't the situation for me right now, and walk away from it. And that's okay. It doesn't matter what other people say or what they think. You do what's right for you. Talk to somebody about it, a mentor, accountability partner, a trusted friend. You guys have that right there of knowing what is going on. So when you call somebody and you're like, my sister-in-law is pissing me off, you know what it means. And it's not like I have to explain the entire story. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't know if you guys meditate. That was a huge one for me when I started doing it. Sit quietly or with a guided meditation. YouTube is how I learned. I'm not good at sitting quietly. I have to have somebody talking in my ears and guiding me through a visualization or something, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, to get yourself back. Journaling is therapeutic to get your feelings out. I also love exercise. What's that?
Exercise is mine. I can figure the world out on the treadmill.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? It is. Exercise for me too. Like my mind goes to a different place and I put in my rap songs and I just go.
Yep.
But journaling, maybe Tanya, when you wake up, maybe for 10, 15 minutes, you just tap on the computer for a little bit just to see what comes out.
In about 2 weeks.
Yeah. Write your whole story.
Yeah, you can write a book during this. The next 4 weeks, just write a book.
Probably easy based on today.
And this is a big one too. And let go of things, situations, and people that you cannot control. There's only 2 things we can control in life, and that's our thoughts and our actions. We try to control so much more. We try to control other people. We try to control our kids. We try to control so many things, but there's only 2 things we can control. And when you realize what that is, and you have to let the other things go, it's hard, don't get me wrong, but it's thoughts and actions. That's all you have control over.
Yep.
All right, so this is where we get into the good stuff. I mean, not that this wasn't good so far, but this one is an interesting one called your board of directors. So we're going to look at your life in stages, or I should say you're going to look at your life in stages. Because remember how you said, oh, things shifted when I went to college. So you're going to look at your life through stages and say, who were you in each stage and who were you trying to be, which is different. So who were you actually, but who are you trying to show up as? And I'm going to show you mine here in a second so it'll make more sense, because there's stages where you were trying to be the people pleaser, but maybe inside that's not actually who you were, but you had to put on this facade of being that person because that's what fit in with the perfect family. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to keep talking about you tonight. It was just, you're giving me a lot of scenarios to talk about. Oh no, are you frozen? Are you there? Are you there? Did I lose you? I am going to, there we go. Back. I'm like, I'm going to go downstairs closer to my Wi-Fi thing. We're going to change up the scenery here for a second. Whoops.
Really quiet.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just changing my scenery. I'm coming closer to my, there we go. I'm coming closer. There we go. All right, can you hear me now? Are you there?
Yep. I'm amazed you just walked through your whole house without bothering you.
I know.
My
I
husband,
know, mine neither.
well, my husband put the kids to bed. They're in the bedroom reading books, so they're all locked in a room.
Oh.
It's
Okay, so we're going to identify, you're going to look at through your different stages of life. You're going to identify them, and you can even give them a name or a different stage. But then you want to look at the positive attributes that each stage is giving you to make you the woman that you are today. Because we can look through them all and be like, well, this wasn't great about this stage, or I didn't do this, or whatever. But you want to find out all those positive attributes, because what that actually then turns into is what I call the CEO, the woman that you are today. Because what ends up happening is that these board of directors, if you think about each stage as a person, the board of directors are sometimes the ones running your life versus the CEO, which is all the positive attributes, the strong, confident, reliable, dependent, independent woman that you are. But we don't always come from that place. We let the board of directors run the show. Here's what I mean. So in the 5th grade, that was when I told you about the teachers coming in and I felt stupid, right? But what I realized she was for me, she was a protector. So when she shows up all the time, it's really her showing up because I'm entering a new stage of life, or I'm doing something that's outside of my comfort zone. And she's like, no, bring it back in. I want you to keep you safe. Like, stay where it's safe and don't try to do all these big things. I know when she's showing up, but she's trying to protect me. So it's not a bad thing. So when I have those insecure feelings, or like I feel stupid or whatever, I know I'm pushing outside of my comfort zone. And I know I'm trying to grow. In the 9th grade, that's when my mom with the basketball, and that's where I became the overachiever. Overachiever is not really a bad thing because it's led me to a lot of success in my life that I've always pushed. But growing up in my family, I always had this look at me so you don't see what's going on with my family is really where that stemmed from, because my father an alcoholic, my brothers don't talk, my parents, like there's so many issues there. But that's pushed me to be an overachiever in my life. Not a bad thing. 17-year-old, I don't know if we all go through this stage where I was the little rebel. I call it a fake rebel. Oh, are you there? Yeah, you're still there.
Yeah.
I call it a fake rebel because when I go to, what was the question I asked earlier? Whoops. Who were you and who were you trying to be? So I was actually trying to relate to my father because we didn't have a really tight connection, but he was a partier and this. So I thought by me being a partier, we would actually have a connection. But that's where I called my fake rebel. I pushed the limits. I was a smart ass, but it gave me a lot of courage. That's where my courage comes from that stage of my life. 20 years old is when I left. So I'm from a small farm town in Northeast Ohio. So I'm not as small as yours, but small. And when I moved to Philadelphia, I had to learn how to connect with people. I grew up with all white Catholic. Everybody was just like me. And when I moved to Philadelphia, I'm like, whoa, I'm like a minority here. Like, this is way out of my comfort zone. And I felt so uncomfortable that I did everything I could to make other people feel comfortable. And that was my way of feeling comfortable. And now in my life, that's what I do. When I walk into a room where I'm on stage and I'm working, that's the compliment that I always get from people. It's like, you always make us feel comfortable. Even Sarah said it earlier, like, oh, I'm glad we can all relate to this and talk about this. I make people feel comfortable,
right.
because a lot of the times I was so uncomfortable, but that's my way of doing it. So that was another stage in my life. So when I could take out all these, when I can break down my life and take out all the positive attributes, if I look at my inner CEO, I'm a spirited, courageous, action-oriented, compassionate connector who makes other people feel comfortable. Now, if I worked every day and led from my inner CEO every day, would be freaking kicking ass in life, right? And that's what I'm trying to do, is stay in that space more often. But what happens is, that protector jumps up and she's like, whoa, 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 you're stepping outside your comfort zone, reel it back in. Oh, are you doing like all these different pieces? Like, who's running your life? Who's running your business? Is it your board of directors, or is it your inner CEO of that strong, confident, courageous woman that you are today? And that's where I think we lose it a lot of the times, is we're like, who's actually running our life? Is it all these past versions of myself, or is it all the great attributes from that past version of myself that creates this one today? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I've never thought about it that way, but it's very true.
It's a fun exercise when you start to look at it and say, and I've had people do this, and they'll name each version of themselves, like that was Sally and this was Sarah and that was Sadie and blah, blah, blah. And because it starts to give it some comic relief, but then you can realize it, like, and I just named my older version of, or my childhood version of myself, Micah, like, so I can see when Micah presents herself and I can understand where, okay, what's happening right now? Who's really driving the ship? Who's the CEO? Who's doing this? And I know it sounds a little bit weird, but when you can make that separation, like I said earlier with that quote, that's where the growth lies. You're like, all right, well, I'm not that person anymore. This is who I am, and this is how I'm going to do it. So it's interesting because in the next couple weeks, like, this is dealing with all the past stuff, and then we're going to go to the future stuff of like the woman that we want to be and break that down a little bit differently. But this deals with all the past stuff. So what you really want to look at is who sits on your board, which is kind of fun. And you just start to go through different stages. And sometimes there's major like milestones or something major that happened in your life that this is what, this is who they are. This is their age. You can give them a name if you want. You can lump them all in a name. You don't have to name them. What were their strengths? How can you work with them? And then how do you connect it to your inner CEO? Like, what strength can you pull out of that? Because, I mean, and it might be hard when you say, okay, I got molested when I was younger. I don't know, it was one time, I don't know if it was multiple times. So you can look at that and just see the tragedy or the horrific incident that it was, but what strength can you pull out of that? Like, now it made me a stronger woman because this is how I view things. So it's trying to pull a strength out, because I love that saying that, and it's hard to think about when you had something so bad like that happen, that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. So that when you think about it from that perspective, like, what strength can I pull out of something really bad happening to me that made me not a better person, but a person I am today because of it.
Right.
So yeah, so that's the homework for this week. That's what I want you guys to dig into, is really sit down and look at those versions of your life. So who sits on the board of directors, and what are the qualities of your CEO? Because once you start to identify all the differences, but then identify your CEO. So everybody that does this exercise, they all come back, because it's hard to talk about yourself in that perspective and say, I'm this and I'm great at this. And what, like, you look at both of you guys are smiling, like, it's hard to do it. But then when you read it, everybody, but everybody reads it with like a smile and with like this badass, like, yes, that is who I am. We might not act like it all the time because we're in mom mode and work mode with the boys club and all this stuff. But just think about it. You can operate from that position of your CEO every day. For one, you'd be like, F you, I'm leaving this job. But like,
yep.
But if you can
I
operate,
think it'll be interesting though.
What's that?
To see, it'll be interesting to see how, to really look at where I've been and how it has made me the person. Because I am the person today. It's just allowing them to be present more.
Mm-hmm. And we don't ever stop and allow ourselves to see. Let me stop this share real quick. We don't ever stop and just allow ourselves to see who we've become.
Mhm.
Oh, we pause for a second.
Right.
We don't just stop and take a look at it, because we're such in this microwave society that everything is just happening so quickly, and we're pushing through and we're doing all of these things, that when we can really stop and take a look at who we are and who we've become and appreciate our greatness, like that's when it gets fun.
Mhm.
That's when you start figuring out yourself. That's when your husbands will start to see the shift and go, who is this new woman? Like, I like, because you know that part of you when you're like on your game, you feel good, you feel confident, you love your outfit, you love your hair, like you were just rocking it and you were in that zone. Well, that's part of this course, and what we'll do next week is like, how do you stay in that zone more often? Like, why is that zone only in spurts?
Yeah.
Why does it only come every once in a while? And that's exactly what we talk about next week, is getting to our zone of genius and living in that space more. Because when you live in that space more, you are happier and you're better at everything. But we choose to like bring ourselves back to this area versus staying in that good spot all the time.
Right.
Yep. Oh, you're making me deep. We got like halfway through this. The triggers. I was like, I think I actually just might need counseling here. Like, there's a lot going on that I haven't thought about in a long time. That this is good.
Yeah.
I know I should like go back for my psychology degree or something. I'm like, hey, I can get you there, but I can't like prescribe anything. I can't have you lay on a couch. Like, I don't know how to do any of that. I can be a friend and we can talk through it to a certain level, but beyond that, I know.
Yeah,
Sorry, sister.
but feeling comfortable enough to discuss it is
Yeah.
Accomplishment in itself. So.
And that's what it is. And I did this talk out in Denver for, I think I told you guys, with like 260 people. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she shared that she was molested by her brother when she was younger, and she's never told anybody. And the woman was like 65 years old. I'm like, can you imagine holding on to that and never saying a word of it all those years? But then that's when I had the moment and realization. I was like, I was not mentally prepared for that. Like, I was mentally prepared to give a talk, but I wasn't mentally prepared for the things that would come up for people and tell them afterward. So yeah, it's just very interesting when you start to go through this and break it down. But yeah, if you need to take it further, then schedule an appointment with somebody different. I can't help you there.
That's funny.
Yeah, we keep it a little lighter here, and then so then you'll go through and you figure out your board of directors, your CEO, and then next week we go and like, how can you live in that space of being that CEO, that stronger woman more often? And then we build upon that. So the first 2 weeks, like I said, we kind of go through the ugly stuff, and then we start to build into the living in that space more often.
Yep.
Awesome.
Good.
I don't know how, I've literally never thought of that before though.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, oh, I've had shit happen to me. It's probably affected how I am and who I am today, but no, I'm not going to think like that.
Right.
Heaven forbid.
Well, no, because we think in the space, like, I'm strong, I'm tough, I got this. Like, I am mentally driven. I can do anything. Like, that's the position. And a little bit like, that's kind of how women have to be in the world today to make it. You know what I mean? Like, nothing's going to bother me. I'm going to push through. And did I tell you guys the name of my book yet that I'm working on?
No.
And you will both appreciate this so much. So, and don't steal it. So I've had this recorded. But the name of my book, I want to call it Waterproof Mascara, because it's all about women going through today's society, working in a man's world, dealing with children, working in a man's world with children that they don't understand when we got to take off to do things.
Yeah.
I said, thank God I had waterproof mascara, because how many times I didn't want people to see a crink in my armor. I didn't want anybody to ever see me cry, but then I would go in my car or I would go in the bathroom and I'd bawl my eyes out. And I would say, thank God I always had waterproof mascara. And nobody ever knew actually what I was feeling, because you could never show it out there, but inside. So the way I write the book, I'm writing it, I should say, is there's like two parts. Like, here's what everybody saw, but here's what actually was feeling behind the scenes.
Yep.
Because we don't know that.
Like, yeah.
You stay so strong during the day, and then you get in your car and you're like, oh my God, I can't do it.
Yeah. And my poor husband gets the brunt of
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
Yeah. No, hey, I can totally relate. And here's the thing. I'm an entrepreneur now. I work from home and everything, and my husband still got the brunt of it last night. So I was like,
Yeah.
But like I
Yep.
said, the difference is he notices it now, the bounce back rate, and it's not that it was comical, but it's just like, oh, you're right. I can't even deny it now because it's so out in the open. Like I can't even argue the argument. Like, no, you're right. That's totally what's happening.
Yeah, but I can't imagine how freeing that is.
Yeah, no kidding.
It is, but
Okay.
like he's done all these, like he's done the triggers, he's done the board of directors, like we've done all these together. So I know his and he knows mine. So it makes it a lot easier when we kind of know where each other come from in different points, like we do.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good. Well,